In today's video, we are going to be breaking down a pop beat in the genre of 80s disco and synthwave. Similar artists can include The Weeknd when making this beat. There's a couple of cool things in this beat that I did recently, which I want to break down in this video for you today, because as I say in all the videos, I always found the best way to learn music production if you're a beginner or even an intermediate, or learn new tips and tricks, is to watch other music producers break down their videos, which is where this YouTube channel comes in. So if you are new to this channel, smash that subscribe button right now, as it's the best way to support the channel. But let's not waste any more time at all. Let's get into logic and let's break down this beat. Okay, so this is the production that we're breaking down today in the video. I'm going to be breaking it down as the order everything was added. I always keep it like that so you can get the best idea of how I've built this track up. It's a very simple track. I always like to keep the tracks that I do on Pop Beat Breakdown YouTube channel very simple, because I understand a lot of you may be beginners to music production, so I want to show you tracks which I know that you can create for yourself after watching these sorts of videos. So today we're starting from the drums, and we're using Analog Circuits presets. So we've got the electric drum kits into Analog Circuits. This is one of my favorite presets in Logic, by the way, for drums. And I do like to use the drop down window, that if you click these tracks individually, you can record your chosen textures. I did change the hi-hat to the tight trap. That was the only thing. Other than that, this is the Analog Circuits kit, just with a little bit of, I like to always boost the low end a little bit on the drums. But this is the drum kit we come up with. The toms are extracted from Splice, and the crashes as well. I've also got a reverse crash in here as well. If you want to know, by the way, how to do a reverse crash, or just reversing audio in general, very quickly I'm going to tell you. All you have to do is hit Control-Shift-R. Control-Shift-R on the keyboard, and that will reverse the audio. Look, I'll quickly do this right now so you can see it in action. Boom. How easy is that? Wicked. Very good way to create a riser, and that's what it is, because we're creating some sort of transition between sections. So let's firstly play you the drums that I've done for this track today. Very simple drum beat, as you can hear. The only other interesting texture I've ever got then is a pretty classic synth section. Is I do have this little thump in here and this little shaker. I just thought it was something different. I like to incorporate interesting sounds into my productions, just like something I wouldn't think to add to make it sound more interesting. Now next we've got the bass, and one of the biggest bits of advice I could ever give if you're wanting to create something that's your own sound is to stack textures or stack sounds on top of each other. Now today we are using the retro synth for our bass sound. We've got two retro synth bass sounds which we combined together. We've got the classic analog bass, and we also have the PWM bass on the other channel. We have the exact same MIDI going into both, but look, if we quickly play these separately, you'll know they sound slightly different. So that's that one. Now, the reason why that is because the classic analog bass really sticks out quite nicely, but then the PWM bass has a nice low end, but also a bit of airiness to it. So when you blend the two together, you get something which is a more complete bass sound. And I wanted it to be a nice moving bass line because, you know, 80s disco, it's quite energetic, it's quite moving. You've got to think about like the disco genre. So let's quickly play you so far, because it's really good to hear the bass and the drums together, because you can get a really good feel for the song in general just by doing this. So this is the bass and the drums. Now, I like to, especially for the choruses of synth songs, I like to add a nice, like, really warm low end. So I do like to add the 70s classic synth bass, which is Alchemy. For those of you who don't know what Alchemy is, it looks like this, and you'll be able to find this in a drop down menu when you're looking for your different software instruments. And because it's more of a sample library, I always like to use 70s classic synth bass. You'll find this in the bass section. Love this, especially on synth pop and Weeknd type tracks. If we just listen to this by itself, it just screams The Weeknd. And it has that nice low end presence for the rest of the track. Really cool. So now we're really starting to build the sound of the track now, how we want it to sound. So I first started with some, basically, I'd probably call it more on the pads front. So we've got the simple analog strings, which is a retro synth preset, the dark swell, which is a, you guessed it, retro synth preset, and the two of these together really start to home in on the 80s. Like the synth strings especially is a really good way to really capture that 80s sound. Now we're really getting into adding to the mid to highs, because the bass is covering the low end, so we need some sort of, brightness to add to the track. So that's where these pads come in, and I do believe there's 2 more pads here which I'm going to bring up with them, because later on towards the end is when I added these, but you probably want to hear these all together. So we've got the 80s air pad as well, and the dream voice. Again, these are all presets in Logic, very easy to use, nothing wrong with presets. So what we've got going on here, we've got a mixture of chords and melodies. It's good to have that mixture because it makes a production sound a lot more interesting, adds a lot more movement. Even if it's just a pad section and you want these to sort of blend into the background, it just really gives it a nice happy vibe. Like when you listen to this now with the drums and the bass, the song, not only does it sound almost complete, but it just, without actually doing much, it has a lot to it and a lot of movement. Really good to have movement. Movement is very important in productions, especially development of melodies. So have multiple different melodies going on, even a simple one. Like listen to how simple this dream voice is I've just added in. It's just doing something different. Again, very simple, but it works really well, especially with this. So that's the sort of things you got to think about. Don't think you've just got to have one melody, one synth doing chords of your song, one bass line, and then a simple drum beat. You can really go to town on your productions to make them good. Now the next section is a very interesting section. This is all the MIDI guitar section. Some people frown on using MIDI guitar. I absolutely thrive on it because Native Instruments, especially, what you're going to be seeing me using is the Electric Mint. This is one of my best ever purchases for Native Instruments. If you're looking for MIDI guitar, it sounds great. And especially for some of the presets that they have. I mean, listen, I'm just going to play you first all the guitar that I've got stacked for each other to create the guitar for the song. So I wanted to do like how it is, because it don't only sound really warm, but it's also quite spacey, which I really like for that sort of synthwave element, because it's not a synth, but it almost becomes like one with the pads when you put this much effect on a guitar, and guitars and synths blend really well together. So I started with some muted guitar first, because again I wanted to really just home in onto the rhythm, because 80s disco is very rhythmic, so it needs something there putting the timestamps in. Something as energetic as the bass line. Again, you can always record this all in yourself. It doesn't have to be MIDI. Then I added this melody in. Again, playing with melodies. Very simple. And then lastly, we have firstly the chords. Sounds great. Now, if you're ever wondering actually how it's actually sampled, so what I've done here is I've split them all with sample delay, so they're at the sides of the mix, but I've also doubled up, because that's what the effect that a sample delay can have when you're stacking loads together. Then I've also used the ROM reverb by Native Instruments, which has a 4.8 second decay. This is almost basically the preset it comes with. ROM again is Native Instruments. I highly recommend that if you're looking for a decent reverb. I use this on literally everything. It is great for that. Now, the last thing I've done is then just duplicate the synth melodies played here, and then just varied it a little bit to this, but an octave up. Because again, we really want to play around with the octaves, because there's so much, like on the terms of the frequency spectrum, there's the airiness, there's the high mids, there's the mids, there's the low mids, then there's the lows, and then there's the sub. So many different parts of a production we need to cover sonically. So this is where this one really starts to come in. So what I'm going to do now is play you all the synths and the guitar together, because we've got loads of different melodies going on, but they're not clashing, they're complementing each other, and we get this really nice wall of sound. And when we add that in with the rest of the song, you basically get the song all together. The beautiful thing about 80s disco and synthwave is it's very repetitive by its nature, so it's very easy from this point to craft almost the whole song at this point. You can add development by changing the chords up, but the main thing is you've got all of the sounds down. And, you know, last thing I did just for a bit of fun is I added a 70s analog lead just to create some sort of a solo. Just like this. Now, one last really cool trick I want to show is listen to the intro that I've done here. You'll notice it's filtered. Now, if you've ever wanted to know how to do this, I highly recommend you do it this way. If you want to filter a whole track for an intro like this, what you want to do is go to track in the top corner here, and you want to go and click, and you want to show output track. It says hide for me because I've already got the output track out, but it will be around here on the screen. So then when you go down to your output track, you want to click this tool here. This is the automation tool. So when you go down, it'll show what I've done here is I've added a low cut, which is filtered in. Now let's quickly just watch this channel EQ here and watch what it's doing. You can see it's moving. So that's because we've automated it here. So how I've done that is firstly, I've made sure that I have a channel EQ in the stereo output. Then I go to the arrow here in this little box and you want to go to channel EQ. And then the first thing you normally want to do is if you're adding like a low cut or a low shuffle, this is a low cut. So I first turned on the low cut, which you have to do here. And then I click on low cut frequency, because then that brings up this window here, even though like I'm doubling up at this point. So this is good so I can show you. And then all you have to do is if you have it where it is now, that means nothing has been automated at all. And this is just going to stay exactly how it is. But if you then was to move up or create some sort of variation, this will create some automation. And it doesn't stop there. You can automate so many different things. You can automate effects, you can automate different like EQ spectrums, you can automate even stuff like compression as well. Like there's really no limit to what you can do with the automation, and it's really something that's good to play around with because you never know what you might end up creating. So that is the Poppy breakdown for today. If you enjoyed this video, smash that subscribe button as it's the best way to support the channel, and also comment below any recommendations for future either genres or type of artists that you want me to make beats of and then break down in future videos. So thank you so much if you made it this far. Keep making music and I will see you in the next video.